This video is all about unit testing in ASP.NET MVC. Before we get into unit testing of ASP.NET MVC, first let's understand what is unit testing and what are its advantages. By definition, unit testing means testing every smallest unit of our code in automated and isolated manner. Automated and isolated, these are two very important words. What exactly mean by this? When we think about any application development, first we do some coding and then we do some testing. And what we do for testing, we execute the application, we put some input values, we click the submit button, we make sure that output is what we are expecting, and finally we say it's proper or it's not proper. That means we do manual testing. Automatic testing means once we develop a code, once we develop an application, then we write another program which will do the testing of our first program, and this second program will test our first code. Hence our testing become reusable. If you want to do repetitive test for any application, it's not required for you to do it manually. Just rerun the second code and that will do the testing of our first code. This is called automation testing. Next, let's understand the word isolation. When we think about any application, it consists of multiple units, or in simple words, multiple logic blocks. Each block will do some special logic, and in unit testing we will test each logical block in independent manner. If we are testing one logical block, it will not be dependent on other logical block, and that is unit testing. Every unit test will be isolated from every other unit test. Now the next question is, why should we do unit testing? In simple words, with unit testing we will get these three things: reusability, performance and surety. Reusability of testing. When we follow unit testing approach, first we create our application code and then we will write our testing code. Now the testing code will do the testing of our application code. That means every time we go and change something in the application code, we will not do testing from the scratch. Rather, we will just rerun the testing code and confirm that our application code is working fine. That means ultimately our testing become reusable now. And testing reusability improves the overall performance of our application development. In application development, every time we change something, we'll simply go and reuse the earlier written testing logic and confirm that our application is working fine. Now the last one is surety. In case of unit testing approach, we will be more sure about our application working, because in this approach we will test every unit, every logical block of our application in an isolated manner. So this is why we will do unit testing. Now let's do unit testing. We will start with testing of simple class library called mymaths library. It have a simple class called class1 here, so let's simply go and rename this class to mymaths, and then let's create a method inside it called public int add int x comma int y. It will return x plus y. Please note, in this example the sample we are using is very easy. It's simply an add function. But in real-time scenario, your function may contain some complicated logic like tax calculation, etc. Now our task is to go and test this function with the help of unit testing. For that, right click your solution, say add new project, test unit test project, OK. As you can see, this unit test project contains a simple class called unit test1, which is decorated with a special attribute called test class. That means this class is going to contain some code which will test some other code. As you can see here, we have a test method inside it. That means this is the actual code which will test some other code. So I'll simply rename this method to test my add method. And next, because we want to test this my maths library, so we need a reference of this library here. So I'll say right click, add reference my maths library. Okay, done. As I said earlier, we will write unit test code inside this test add method, and it will contain simple 3 lines of code: arrange, act, and assert. Arrange means prepare everything which is required for testing. In our case, we need object of myMaths class. So let's do that. myMaths m equal to new myMaths. Second step is act. Act means execute, where we will store the response or the return value in some variable m dot add, and we will pass some dummy values. And final one is assert, where we will compare the response or the return value with the expecting value and confirm that our code is working fine. So here we will say assert dot r equal, we will use this generic version int, because we know that the response is going to be int. So we'll say we are expecting 11, because we know when we add 5 and 6 we will get 11, and we will say result. Now you may be wondering, if we are passing everything hard coded here and if you are comparing it with a hard coded value, how does this test method become actually usable? Now don't worry about that. Let me give an example. Let's say you have created this calculator by your own, okay, and you want to test this calculator in a manual way. So what you will do, you will go and put some values. I'll say 5 plus 3. Now how will you make sure that your calculator is actually working? You will think that if I get 8, that means my calculator is proper. Let's check. Let me press equal. Yeah, it's 8. That means my plus operation is working fine for my calculator, because the one output I am expecting and the one output given by the calculator is matching. That means my calculator is working for plus. Let me do it again. I'll say 8 plus 3. I believe I should get 11. Let's see if it is actually 11. Yes, that means my calculator is working fine for add functionality. Always remember, when you think about testing of any application, what you do is you always go and put some dummy input values and you will expect some kind of output. And if the output you are getting and output you are expecting is matching, you say yes, my application is working fine. Similarly, when it comes to automation testing, it really doesn't matter if you are passing hard-coded values, because when you pass hard-coded values, then only it will become easier for you to say that yes, the output is the one which I am expecting, yes or no, and you will say yes, my code block is working fine or my code block is working not fine. Secondly, in case of unit test project, we also have an ability to create data-driven unit tests. Data-driven unit tests, where we will use some data sources like Excel data source or SQL data source or CSV data source as an input to this test method. For example, let's say we will create a data source like something like this. We'll say number 1, comma number 2, comma result, and we will say 1, comma 2, comma 3, 3, comma 2, comma 5, 5, comma 6, comma 11, 6, comma 5, comma 11. We will simply attach this data source to our test method, and when we execute the test method, it will automatically get executed for 4 times, and every time this 5 and 6 will be replaced with this num1 and num2, and this 11 will be replaced with result. So our test method will become dynamic. It will get executed multiple times with single click. Right now in this practical we will not get into that, but in one of the upcoming video we will try to cover this thing as well. Now let's go and execute our unit test code. For that, first we will build the solution, and then we will say test Windows Test Explorer. As you can see, there is one test method here, which is nothing but this test my add method. We'll simply say right click and run selected test, and obviously it will pass because everything is correct at this moment. Now next what we will do is we will do some changes into this method. So we'll simply change this plus to minus. That means our logic is broken now. So in order to test the earlier functionality, what we will do is we will simply rerun the test case. And as you can see, it's broken. It simply says you are expecting 11 but you are getting -1. That means your new changes broken something which was there earlier. And as you can see, reusability of unit test method made my testing life much more easier. Every time I want to test my application, I'll just rerun all the test methods and I am done. My testing performance will become increased and I'll get more surety about working of my application. Now this is all about testing simple class library. Now let's talk about unit testing of an ASP.NET MVC application. And trust me, unit testing of MVC is going to be easier than your expectation. In order to understand unit testing in ASP.NET MVC, let's first talk about layers of ASP.NET MVC. We have model, which is nothing but our business layer, and again at the end of the day, business layer is nothing but a collection of simple classes, a simple class library, and we already know how to test a simple class library. So model is already testable. The one more layer which is not shown in ASP.NET MVC theoretically is data access layer. Some people include data access layer as a part of model, but some people keep it separate. But in both the cases, data access layer is again a simple class library. That means again it can be easily tested using the same approach which we used for testing this myMaths class. Now we left with two things: testing of view and testing of controller. Let's start with view. In ASP.NET MVC, view is nothing but its UI. It's a design part of our application. But sometime, because of bad coding practice, we will go and write some view specific logic inside view. We'll go and put some if condition, we'll go and put some switch condition, etc. inside view. That ultimately makes our code non-testable. View is nothing but it's a HTML, and that's why it becomes very difficult to test any view. If your view is containing some logic, that means it's a bad practice. In one of the video in our ASP.NET MVC section, that is view model, we learned how we can take out all the logics from view and put it in a separate class called view model. If you didn't heard about view model, then please go through that view model video first and then we can proceed here. View model will simply take presentation logic and data transformation logic from view and keep it in a separate class called as view model. And as the name suggests, view model is class. That means again class library. That means it's again testable. So now we left with controller. So far we learned that data access layer is testable, your model, that is business layer, is testable, your presentation logic and data transformation logic is also testable because it will be written inside a separate class called as view model. Now we are left with only one kind of logic, that is user interaction logic. User interaction logic will be written inside controller. User interaction logic means logic which will handle user requests and send some response. In short, action methods inside the controllers, and that's what we will learn here. We will learn how to test controllers in ASP.NET MVC project. So let's create a simple MVC project first. Right click the solution, say add new project, ASP.NET web application. Okay, we'll take MVC, but this time we'll also check this checkbox, that is add unit test. And I don't want to host in the cloud, so I'll uncheck this option. I'll say OK, and as you can see, it will simply create two projects, one MVC project and one test project. Now what we do is we will go and create one simple controller here. I'll say right click, add new controller, MVC5 controller, add. We'll name this controller as customer controller, add. Now let's understand what exactly we are going to test inside controller. What kind of logic will be written inside controller? In controller, we will write user interaction logic, which will handle request and send some response. So what we will test here? We will test these three things. We will confirm whether an action method is generating proper view result or not. We will confirm whether an action method is generating proper view data, view bag or model or not. We will confirm whether an action method is properly redirecting to correct location or not. So that's what we will do. So let's create action methods accordingly. So our first action method will be, let's keep it as index, and let's take a simple route parameter here, that is int id. And then based on the value of I, we will either return view1 or view2. So let's put a simple if condition here. So in this action method we will test for view result. Now let's create one more action method. I'll say public action result. Okay, let me copy it here. I'll say index2, and here we will say return view. Let's keep view name as index2 view, but we will also do one more thing here. We will say view data of my key equal to, I'll say some value. Done. Now let's go and test both of these methods independently and in automated manner. For that, we will simply add one unit test class inside our web application 1.test project. Right click, add new unit test, and inside it we will create one method called test for view name, and inside it we'll start with simple arrange statement. That means we will create object of customer controller. We will say customer controller. Definitely we need a namespace for that, so that will be using web application 1.controllers. C is equal to new customer controller. Let's name it like this, view name test for view name 1, and then we will say act. And here we will say c dot index, and we will put 0 in the parameter. Now if you check the return type of this index action, it's action result, but internally we know that it is going to return a view result. So we will say view result v is equal to c dot index 0. Again we need namespace for this, so we will say using system.web.mvc. It's here now, and then we will cast it to view result. Then finally, as usual, we will write assert statement. Here we will say assert dot r equal, I know I'm going to get string and I'm expecting to get, what was that, view 1, but I'm getting v dot view name. Okay, and we will create one more action method, test for view name 2, and in this case we will say customer controller c equal to new customer controller, arrange will remain as it is, c dot index 1, and I believe we will get view 2 now. Done? Yes. So we have written two test methods for this one action method. Next, it's time to test this index 2 action method. So we'll come here, we'll create one more action method. I'll say public, okay, let me copy paste it, or let's say public void test for view data, and here we will simply write again arrange statement first, which will be nothing but again this one. Then we will write act statement, where we will say again view result v is equal to c dot index 2. Okay, and finally in assert statement we will say assert dot r equal, I am expecting string to get, and my expected value is so some value, and I am actually getting v dot view data of what was the key was my key. Done. Okay, we need to cast it here. I'll say as view result. Okay, and here also we need to cast it because view data store objects, so I'll say toString. Done. So now we have test methods for these two action methods. Before we get into next, first let's test these two things first. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll simply build this solution first. Now as soon as I build, you will see that in this text explorer you will see three more test methods: test view name 1, test view name 2, and test add method. Okay, we can't see this test for view data because we have to attach this test method attribute for that. Now again let's build it. Now we will see all four methods are here. Now let's execute these tests. So we'll click on this run all button. As you can see, except this test my add method, all other tests are passed. The reason for this failure is we are expecting 11 and we are actually getting -1. So now let's test one of these things. Let's test this test view data in debug mode. I'll put a breakpoint here. I'll say right click and say debug selected test. Breakpoint is in arrange statement. Press F11 and it is trying to execute this index to action. F11, view data generated, returning view result. Now we will again back here. If you check the view now, you will see that it actually contain all the properties like view name. You can check view data is here, temp data is here, everything. Okay, so I'm simply putting a simple assert statement and confirming that test is working fine. Now just like view data, what we can do is we can go and test view bag here, we can go and test temp data here, and also we can test for model. Now let's change a small thing in our action method and let's rerun in debug mode. So let me put a breakpoint here. I'll just execute this test for view name 1, debug selected test. The breakpoint will again start with this arrange statement. I'll press F11. Now if I press F11, you will see that now it will go to else part and return view 2, and I'm expecting view 1, so my test case will simply fail. When you are in debug mode, if test case fails, it will throw exception, and when you simply run the test case like this, I'll say run selected test, it will either pass or either it will fail. Now let's talk about an action method which returns different kinds of action results based on different kinds of conditions. For example, the one which looks like this one. In this action method, based on the value of I, either redirect to route result will be returned or view result will be returned. So let's write test method for this action method. Let's go back to our unit test class and let's create a simple method that is public void test for redirection. We will simply attach test method attribute to this class because it's test method, and we will simply follow 3 steps, that is arrange, create object of customer controller, then act, redirect to route result r equal to c dot index 3, we will pass 0 as redirect to route result, and then we will say assert dot r equal, we are expecting string, we are getting index 4. As you can see, we will get index 4, so we will put this index 4 here, but we are actually getting r dot route values inside this action key. dot toString. Now let's build it, and after that we will get to see that test for redact here. Simply say right click, run selected test, and it will pass. Okay, now let's go to our action method and let's simply make it 1. Now what will happen? Now when I pass 0, it will go here. That means we will get view result. That means this casting will fail. So let's see what happens. I'll put a breakpoint here and I'll do debug here. Debug selected test. We'll say now because casting will fail, you will see that when I press F11, I'm here, I get view result and casting will fail. So R will contain null now. That means r.route values will throw object reference not set to an instance of the class. That means we are getting exceptions. Let's press stop and let's try to execute it. Instead of debugging it, let's try to execute it. You'll see that it will simply say test failed. And reason for this failure is simply null reference exception, that is object reference not set to an instance of an object. So that takes us to end of this unit testing video. Hope you understood everything about unit testing. So in summary, we spoke about what is unit testing, why unit testing, how it make developer life easier. We spoke about how to do simple unit testing, and we spoke about how to perform unit testing in ASP.NET MVC. Thanks.